For the training tonight on fundraising, we're going to cover some fundraising fundamentals and then talk about money out, so your budget, and money in. These are your donations. Then we'll wrap up with some next steps and resources. Any thoughts? Anybody want to type in the chat? Why do we fundraise? Why are we here to talk about money? Got an active chat with a lot of introductions. Thank you. You know what, Chris? That sums up how I think of it too. It's a necessary evil. I hate the money in politics. Absolutely hate it. And it's the game we're playing now, right? These are the rules we have to work by. And so we need to fund our campaign activities. So winning elections takes three things. You might have heard this or you might hear this as you're campaigning. It takes time, talent, and treasure. So time, obviously, there's a finite amount of time, whether you're looking at March or you're looking at November. We only have so much time, thanks to the laws of physics. Then talent, this is you. This is your campaign team, the candidate, the campaign manager, your volunteers, all of the people who have skills and abilities that can help you. And then finally, it does take that treasure. It takes money to run a campaign. You know, from the very beginning, you had to probably pay a filing fee. Right off the bat, there's money in politics just to run for office.
Mhm.
So, yes, marketing costs money, and we're going to talk about all of that here today. Last week, if you attended, I included the campaign plan template document that we have created for candidates to use. You don't have to, but it's a good starting point, perhaps. And these questions are included in the fundraising section of that campaign plan template. So your strategy is going to address how much money do you need to raise? How much can you or will you contribute to your own campaign? You don't have to fund your own campaign, but perhaps you can or you want to. Make sure for your particular race, you know what limits there are for fundraising. So, caps on individual donations. Um, some municipalities or some communities might have fundraising thresholds. You can only raise X number of dollars. That's probably not relevant for most of you. It's not applicable for the General Assembly, or any of the statewide offices, things like that. Then also for your fundraising strategy, um, think about how you're going to track your donations. Campaign finance is no joke. Campaign finance jail is real jail. We are Democrats. We're going to follow the law. No crimes. So think about how you're going to track the money comes in and track your budget. If you are running for school board, if you're running for town council, if you just have a smaller size race and you're not going to raise and spend tons and tons of money, you might be able to effectively track your campaign finances using a spreadsheet, Excel, Google Sheets, something like that. If you're running for General Assembly, higher office, if you're in a competitive General Assembly race, State House, State Senate, and you're looking at a, $100,000 plus type campaign, you are almost certainly going to need more robust tools to track that money. So if you're in one of those races where you're going to be raising and spending a ton of money, your treasurer might have preferences in terms of what tools you use to track those dollars. I'm throwing out a couple of options here. NGP is a database that will help you keep track of your donors. Um, Numero is a tool to help you with call time. I'll talk about call time a little bit more later, but this is when you're actually calling and asking people for donations in a really methodical way. I used Numero as a campaign manager on a campaign that raised $200,000. Um, and that was that investment was worth it for that kind of dollar amount. So if you're in one of those big races, spending a lot of money, um, your treasurer might have some recommendations. I do see in the chat, Steve is saying you need a treasurer. So you can ask your county party or your district party, the people in those organizations, who is in the area that could help serve as your treasurer. If somebody from the county party helped recruit you to run for office, I would definitely go back to that ask and say, who do you know in the county that can serve as my treasurer? It is a specific skill set and it takes some special training. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Looked, asked, begged, still no takers. That might be something, Steve, that if you email me separately, we can help you find somebody. Because it is challenging. I know that Denise Cheney serves as the state party treasurer. There is a treasurer email listserv, and she has been emailing there to ask people to step up as treasurers for candidates. So that's something that we can help you with. Chris just put my email in the chat, so thank you, Chris. Going back to Norma, what is NGP beyond the acronym? NGP and Numero are both kind of what I would call a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. It's not so much about reporting to the State Board of Elections as it is about keeping track of your fundraising leads, who is donating, how much time and effort are you putting towards your fundraising. So going back to this question of how much might you need to raise for your race, I think this might have come up last week as well. I recommend you look at past campaigns for the seat you're running for to see what people have raised and spent in the past. If it is a General Assembly race you're running, the last election was 2 years ago. So I might look at 2 years, 4 years, 6 years ago. And I think, yeah, Chris just shared this link here so you can look at campaign finance filings for previous races. How much did the Democrat raise and spend? Did the Democrat win? If not, how much did the winner raise and spend? That will just give you a sense. Now, going back to I hate the money in politics, money's not everything. It is helpful, it is that necessary evil. But if you don't raise as much as your opponent, that doesn't mean you won't win. So just keep that in mind. You need to have money to buy some tools and resources and communicate with voters. But what you might lack in dollars, hopefully you can make up with passionate volunteers, with your own passion and time and energy, and talking to as many voters as possible. Okay, use that information about past fundraising to help set your goals. Here are some rules of thumb. How much you raise does impact how many voters you can probably reach. Things like the mailers you get, direct mail you get in your mailbox, right? Those are very expensive. Those cost money. Um, how many palm cards or pieces of literature or flyers you can hand out to voters at festivals or on their doors, things like that. That is impacted by how much money you can raise, but it's not the end all be all. Generally, what you're going to want to try to do is raise your money early and spend it late in the campaign. So there are some startup costs for your campaign, but most of the money you spend talking to voters is probably going to be late in the campaign. So, if you have a March primary, a lot of this timing is very challenging for you because you've really had to hit the ground running since you filed in December. If you don't have a competitive primary and you're looking towards November, you've got more time to work with. Either way, try to raise money early. Don't spend it all right off the bat. Save it for your voter contact activities. I recommend you plan a budget and a fundraising plan for three scenarios. There's kind of a medium level, like this is what I think I need to raise and spend to be a serious candidate in this race, and then set some stretch goals, like what if I really knocked it out the park and I was able to do a lot of fundraising? What would I do with that money? And if the fundraising is a real struggle for me in this race. What's the bare minimum I need to raise to have a viable campaign? So do like a low, medium, high type of scenario for your fundraising. Don't forget to plan for your startup and shut down costs. So, for your startup, you had your filing fees, you probably need to get some business cards or a flyer right off the bat. You might need to pay someone to design a logo or a website or things like that. Some of those the state party is helping candidates with, for example, with the website design templates that we're providing. That can help save you some money, but you might need someone to design your logo. So those are some startup costs. On the other end, there are the shutdown costs. So you're probably not going to turn off your website on November, what's election day this year? November 3rd? You're not going to turn off your website on November 3rd, right? You're probably going to have it until January 1st or something. So that website hosting is going to continue. You will have treasurer filing fees. There will be a filing period after election day. So just don't forget that you're going to have some expenses after the November election, if that's the election you're looking at, or the March primary, just so that you don't catch yourself short. The other rule of thumb here is however much money you raise, you're pretty much going to spend it all. There's not really a lot of sense to be sitting on money that you raised, that you're carrying over to the next election. Like you're really going to want to spend it all. I also recommend the candidate and or campaign manager, depending on how your race is set up. When I was a candidate and when I was a campaign manager, I was looking at these numbers every single day. It was the first thing I did in the morning, the last thing I did in the evening. How much money did I raise yesterday, today? What are my goals for the day? What bills did I pay today? I always wanted to know what was my cash on hand. How much have I raised? How much have I spent? How much cash do I have left? There are some things that you need to do to be an official campaign if you haven't already. So, because the filing period was 4, 5, 6 weeks ago now, you may have already done this, but you might not have yet. So, as you're setting up your bank account, you're setting up perhaps ActBlue to do your fundraising, you will need to have some legal ducks in a row. Your legal entity name is something that's probably going to be Christy Boer for Holly Springs, District 3. Chris Dearman, 2026, Stokes County Commissioner. It's going to be something that will be your legal entity name. You will need a state board of elections identification number, and you need to name a treasurer. We've had some conversation I see in the chat where people need some help finding treasurers. Let us know. We'll do what we can to help you there. And then through the IRS, you may need to get your employer identification number. This is something that might be needed on some of these forms, might be needed for your bank account, things like that. Chris shared the link to get that employee identification number from the IRS. I will send out these slides as well, or if you want to take a quick picture of that, because getting that EIN for political organizations for a campaign is not the most common type of EIN. So these steps here, these 4 bullet points, will tell you how to make sure you can get the right type of employer identification number. Let's see here. Oh, can a treasurer handle more than one campaign? Absolutely. And because this is kind of specialized skills, um, treasurers often handle multiple campaigns. No problem with that. They're probably not, and you wouldn't want them to handle your campaign and your opponents. And I would personally be making sure that maybe they only handle Democrats' campaigns, not also Republicans. But it's highly likely that your treasurer will do this for more than one race. When I ran for office, I actually had my husband serve as my treasurer, and I did it all myself. Not ideal, but I also had a hard time finding a treasurer at the time. The State Board of Election ID number is at the ID you're issued by the local Board of Elections when filing. I actually don't remember that. You caught me with a question I can't remember the answer to. Um, that makes sense to me. State Board of Elections identification number would be the number that either they gave you or you request from them, but I don't have a link to request it, so it must be what they gave you. Um, I'm sorry I'm squishy on that answer, but maybe somebody else has one and can confirm that that my understanding is correct. There is mandatory training for treasurers, so I think, oh, here, it's on this slide. Thank you, Norma, for transitioning us here. So a couple of resources. Um, Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Let me pause here. Christina, the only person off limits is your spouse. I ran for office in California and it wasn't a crime. So, yeah, it was not great. Everybody's telling me I'm a criminal. Sorry, it was in a different state. So, yes. Okay. Back to the State Board of Elections resources. Sorry, I sent us sideways. So, the State Board of Elections has the campaign finance manual. It will tell you your reporting schedule, what you need to report and when. It's usually um, it's usually going to be every month or two until you're getting close to the election. So let me set aside the primary for now because um, the timeline's probably more aggressive for anybody who has a competitive primary. If you don't have a primary and you're running in November, once it gets to be October, your cadence of how often you need to file these reports is going to be more frequent, and it'll get to the point where if you get a certain dollar amount, you have to report it within 24 hours. Your treasurer will be able to help you with that. But look at that reporting schedule and make sure that's worked into your overall campaign calendar. There is mandatory treasurer training. So this is offered by the State Board of Elections. Chris dropped these links in the chat. I will also share them in the follow-up email tomorrow. Um, so yes, that is training from the State Board of Elections. I'm afraid I can't help you much more than point you in the right direction so that you can sign up for that. Okay, I that covered kind of the fundraising fundamentals. Let me catch up on some of the comments here. I had to use the tax identification number, the EIN, to open my bank account. I don't think I had to give it to Act Blue. I think it was really to get my campaign finance bank account. Okay. Yeah, take that training early. Yeah. And while it's mandatory for treasurers, I do recommend candidates take it as well, especially if you're not in heavy duty campaign mode because you have a competitive primary. If you're looking at November, the candidate taking the campaign finance treasurer training from the Board of Elections is a very good idea. Act Blue does need an EIN to link to Stripe. Okay. Thank you for flagging that. All right, let's talk about money out. And this is your budget, what you're going to spend money on. So we'll go into more detail on some of these, but here are some of the expenses you might have. Now, I've mentioned we've got people from all across the state running from state senate, potentially to school board or some municipalities. Some city council elections are this year. So you know your race better than I do. Some of these are going to be relevant for you. Some of them might not be. Website. So, buying a domain name, so buying christyboair.com, for example, probably costs, I haven't bought one in a while, but it's usually 20 to 30 bucks, not a huge expense. Website hosting, probably about $25 or so a month, might be more if you're adding bells and whistles, or if you're running a really big campaign and you need more capacity or server space. And The state party can give you templates for your website design if you are going to be hosting your website on Squarespace or Wix. So that would save you money on the design side of things. Then there is literature. So palm cards, flyers, yard signs, handouts, anything that you're going to print with your name, your face, your policy positions. When it comes to texting, and in next week's training on field organizing, I'll talk a little bit more about when it makes sense to text. But texting usually costs 3 to 5 cents per outgoing message. So the way I thought about this for my race was I wanted to text people I'd previously identified as supporters when ballots dropped to make sure my supporters got to the polls. And maybe I was going to text 5,000 people 3 times at 5 cents each, something like that to figure out how much money you need to put in your budget. The state party uses Daisy Chain as our texting platform. I have also used Scale to Win. There are a couple others I've used. The pricing is pretty comparable. They are, if you use something like Daisy Chain or Scale to Win, it's something that I could potentially help with if you hit some hiccups, just because I know those systems. But I've used those and I'm comfortable with both of those. Direct mail. So these are the pieces of mail you get in your mailbox on like cardstock. This can be very expensive. This can be one of your biggest voter contact expenses. You have to pay somebody to design it. You might need to get a photographer. Then there is the paper, the printing, the postage. It can add up. Again, we might talk about that a little bit more next week when we talk about contacting voters, but direct mail can be a big expense. Paid advertising, this is traditional or digital. So traditional would be you're watching TV and you see an ad. Digital would be I'm watching Netflix or Hulu and I see an ad. Might also be you're paying to boost your campaign Facebook page on Facebook. Now, if you are running a competitive big race that is competitive state house or state senate race, you might actually have TV advertising, whether it's digital or traditional. If you are running for a school board, for a town council, for a sheriff's race, for small county commissioner race, you're probably not going to have TV advertising, but you might have some digital advertising boosting your posts on Facebook or things like that. And then staff. Again, depending on the size of your race, if you have a treasurer, you will need to compensate them almost certainly. It's usually a dollar amount per campaign finance report they file for you, for example, $100 a report or $250 a report. It might depend on the size of your race because if you have a big race and you're raising a ton of money, you're going to have more donations coming in, which means they have to do more data entry. You might have a campaign manager. Again, if you're running a competitive race in November, you might have paid staff. Unlikely, but you might have office space. Sometimes county parties will let you use their space, particularly if you don't have a primary. You might be able to work when you need to from county party's office. If you've got a real big race statewide, if you're, when you think about people who are running those competitive state house, state assembly, or top of the ticket type races, congressional races, they have multiple full-time staffers, hopefully with benefits, because we are Democrats and we believe people deserve health care. That's when you're going to have TV, maybe radio ads. You might need to buy some technology, some computers or phones, maybe some office equipment, copiers, postage. So those are things to keep in mind if you're in a big race. Let me catch up on what's going on in the chat here. Let's see. Canva is great. We do We do a lot of stuff with Canva. Oh yeah, campaign fundraising text from something you've never heard from all across the country. I hate that. Um, is it appropriate to solicit money if you're not a declared candidate? If you're not a declared candidate, you can't accept donations. You need to be filing campaign finance reports, things like that. Those go kind of hand in hand. If you have unspent money, if you win or don't win, if you win, either way, people might use that to fund their next election, or people might donate that to another candidate or to their county party or something like that. Yeah, I hate all those text message fundraising things. Yeah. Karen, I see Karen's going to miss the training next week. You can reach out to me after that training and I'll send you the follow-up email. So you'll get the slides and the recording. They're also posted on YouTube. So if Chris has access to the YouTube playlist, she'll drop that link in the chat for us. Do you pay for endorsements? I would not pay for an endorsement. I would hope that if someone endorses me, they want to invest in my campaign. Shouldn't really be a pay for play thing. Okay. Couple of specific tools for you. This organization I'm sharing here is called Arena, and it is a training program for candidates and campaign staff. They have a campaign budget spreadsheet that is built that you can use. Chris just dropped that in the chat. And I think there are a couple of options. The one I gave you is a week by week template, and it will list some potential expenses. And it's coded, it has formulas in it. So if you say, I'm going to spend $20 a month on website hosting, like it'll calculate that out for you. So I do think this is a good campaign budget template. And they also have a campaign cash tracker. So this is what I was talking about, cash on hand. What's my money in? What's my money out? How much money do I have on hand? So that is also a resource that I think is particularly helpful. Okay. Any questions on budgeting? We had a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to keep moving. Let's talk about raising money, fundraising. Okay. One thing we talked about last week on the strategic plan in general, for every type of activity done for your campaign, you need to know who will do what and by when. So that's also important here when you work on your fundraising plan. So here's what some potential sources of revenue. And we're going to go through these here one by one. This is a list of likely sources of revenue. Call time. This is when the candidate is dedicated. I got 2 hours blocked off. I got a list of people I'm going to call. I'm going to ask them all for money. That's call time. That is going to be 40 to 50% of the money you raise. You might also have meetings with donors. Now, this is probably for those bigger type races where you're asking somebody for a couple of $1,000 and they want to hear, they want to meet you as a candidate. They want to know what is your path to victory? Are you a viable candidate? That's where you might have a meeting. But most of the money you raise is going to come from call time. You may also raise 15 to 25% from fundraising events. And I've got some suggestions on how to think about fundraising events here in a moment. Digital and email. So when we talked about texting and getting texts from people all around the country, email donations, this is a pretty wide range here, but 3 to 15% of your fundraising will probably come from those kinds of sources. I am not recommending that you text and email people all around the country for your race. That's generally not helpful. When we are getting text and emails from candidates all across the country, they tend to be congressional candidates or Senate candidates. I also don't think it's that helpful for those races. Um, I I think that that tactic burns out our Democratic donors. And I think that there are fundraising consultants who work at that level who don't care as much about the long-term health of the Democratic Party as I do. And that's why they use those tactics. So I don't think for most of you here, you're going to be sending some national fundraising text and emails. Um, I have a hard time thinking of exceptions, but I do think you will be sending emails to your supporters, sending emails to your volunteers, people in your community, even if it's mass email. And when you're sending those emails, you should have a call to action to say donate. Some of your emails might specifically say please donate. But even if you're saying, hey, we're having canvases every Saturday this month, come join us. If you can't make it, think about sending a donation, something like that. Because the money is important for your race. So make it easy for people to donate to you, but like, I don't know, probably don't send it to somebody in Oregon asking them to donate to your campaign. Okay, direct mail. Let me go back for 1 second here. Digital and email, there might be if you are focused on a November election or when you win your March primary, there will probably be a training in the spring. Last year, we did a couple of training sessions with Act Blue where they talked about email fundraising best practices, and that was helpful. So we'll probably do that again in the spring. Direct mail. Sometimes you still get a piece of mail from somebody asking you for a donation. Again, for the races you're kind of running, I, I don't know. I'm skeptical of the return on investment for something like that. And it does have a very long lead time. So if it's something that you're interested in or somebody is recommending to you, know that you need to get ahead of that far in advance. And it's a big outlay of cash. I'm not very confident about how much money you would get from that. Then political action committees or endorsers, so they may donate to your campaign. I'm thinking about labor unions, environmental groups, Moms Demand Action, Run for Something, the Working Families Party. I'm thinking of some of these other political organizations that might endorse, and sometimes those endorsements will come with donations. Not always. When I ran for office, again, it was in California. I was endorsed by my county party, and then they asked me for money. And I thought that was kind of bonkers that I kind of expected they would give me money. I'm telling you this just so that you don't spend so much time pursuing endorsements without a clear sense of what the value will be to your campaign for that endorsement. So don't expect that those are going to be like, okay, I got an endorsement and now my campaign's fully funded. Just want your expectations to be clear. And then there's this bucket here, other. Don't you can't plan for other, but there might be some other, I don't know, maybe you have a big enough campaign you sell merchandise. Unlikely, but potentially. Um, so these are kind of rules of thumb about where your revenue will come from and what to plan for. Um, I see. Should you expect cash donations? You can accept cash donations, but you still need to get the same information from people for campaign finance reporting purposes. So you still need to know their name, their occupation, their employer. You still need to make sure that person doesn't give more than the allowed limit. So you still need to record all of that. Certainly, people donate with checks all the time still. So, yes, you can. Data on the impact of different types of marketing. So I'm not sure if you're talking about from a fundraising perspective, but if you're talking about talking to voters, we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. But I will say that it's challenging to have really specific, high confidence data about that in the political sphere. Should I refuse money from any and all PACs? Hey, so I think that's a really good question. I think it's a great question to ask yourself early on, in general. Have a sense of what your fundraising policies will be. So on the progressive side of the democratic ecosystem, there are a lot of candidates who say, I'm not going to accept donations from PACs, or I'm not going to accept donations from corporations, things like that. I would say it is up to you as a candidate. It's your judgment call. Some voters are drawn to candidates who don't accept any donations from political action committees. Keep in mind that it might make it more challenging for you to raise the money that you need. Maybe there are some political action committees where you are value aligned and you feel okay accepting their donation, but others you're not as excited about. When I was running, I had the opportunity, I was invited to interview for an endorsement from the Realtors Board in my area. And I consider myself progressive, and I know where I was that housing was going to be an issue, and that I think housing is unaffordable, and that realtors like expensive housing because they make more money. So I had a feeling that I was not going to be values aligned with this organization. I sent them an email and I said, I am not interested in your organization's endorsement, so I'm not going to complete the endorsement survey. However, if you still want to meet and talk, I'm happy to talk. So we did. We met, we talked. They asked me why I didn't want to apply for their endorsement, and I had a couple of talking points about what was important to me and that I thought it was not aligned with their goals. Turns out my actual realtor was on this committee, and she told me afterwards that they loved me, they appreciated my honesty. She personally donated to me, and they just appreciated that I was not being a traditional politician and just kind of sucking up to them to try to get some money and not be aligned with my values. So I share that story just to say you as a candidate need to make some of those decisions for yourself, what you stand for, what the voters you're trying to persuade care about, and how they will view your ethics in your race. Long answer. Sorry, Trevor. How effective are billboards? Hmm, I'm not personally a billboard fan, but as Melissa says, this is the lawyer answer. Like it depends. Um, I mean, if you have like a statewide race or a General Assembly race, maybe, or if the billboards are super cheap, but it probably wouldn't be the first place I would put my money. Does Act Blue charge a fee? Yes, they do. It is 1%, 2% of how much is donated, something like that. Um, $50 max cash donation per day. Yeah, and I guess when I was thinking cash, I was thinking checks, not like someone handing you a wad of cash. I have turned down people handing me actual cash. Um, yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. I talked about meetings, so um, more likely to be a part of your plan if you're running for kind of higher office. It's a big time commitment. I would reserve this for big asks, big donors. But if you're doing this, be prepared. So have some documentation to show that you are viable, that you are a strong candidate. How are you spending your money? Are you being smart about it? Things like that. Talk about your strategy, ask for advice, and if the advice makes sense for your campaign, act on it. This is another one for me. You know, my bias is that I am on the more progressive side. Um, I feel like big donors give big amounts because they want to influence you, and I'm not personally super psyched about that, but you can make that decision for your race. Definition of cash. Yeah, actual cash bills. That's what's limited to $50 a day. Where's the first place I'd put your money? So with my campaign, I did design website and business cards very early on. And then I printed postcard size literature so that when I went and knocked on people's doors, I would have something to leave behind to tell them about me as a candidate. That's the first place I put my money. Call time. Recommendations here for call time. Schedule it. Call time, I did not find super fun. This is hard. Now, if you're finding this easy, or if you do find it easy, or your campaign manager finds this easy, then my gosh, grab onto that enthusiasm and work with it. Most candidates find this challenging. So, any task that I need to do that I'm not excited about, I might procrastinate. You can't afford to procrastinate this because you need this money to fund your campaign. So, put call time on the calendar, hold yourself to it. Prepare in advance. So if you have a big enough team or a big enough race, you might have a finance director. This is your chief fundraiser. Or that might be a staff person or it might be a volunteer. Ideally, this person can prep a list for you. So you as the candidate don't have to do this, and they'll come with a sheet of paper and say, here are the 50 people you're calling today. Here's how much we're going to ask from each person. Here's what we know about them. I mean, that's best case scenario. Have someone with you when you're doing call time. So we call this staffing. Have someone staff you during call time. That person is there to hold you accountable, to high five you when you get money, to poke you with the stick when you're saying, I don't want to make any more phone calls. They can take notes, who needs to be followed up with, all of those things. It is really a best practice to have someone with you for call time. I like thanking donors. Um, so whether that is, I kind of set some parameters for my campaign that depending on the dollar amount someone donated and if they did it in a response to me prompting them or if they did it on their own without me calling them during call time, I went down different paths for thanking them. So if you gave me a max donation, I'm sending you a handwritten thank you note and gushing. That went to my grandma, my mom, my mother-in-law, my best friend, things like that. And then otherwise, it might be a text, thank you for your donation, things like that. But I do encourage you to thank donors for buying into your campaign. Important note here is the most likely donors are people who have already donated to you. Getting someone to set up as a recurring donor or donate a second time is generally a bit easier than getting a brand new person to donate to you. So if you have a competitive primary in March, when you win that primary, you're going to go back to all those people and ask them to donate for your November election, for example. Okay, let me see what's in the chat. Is it okay to have a campaign manager or competent volunteer call donors? I'm not super keen on that. This is one of the things where the candidate doing it themselves is much higher impact. What I can see having the campaign manager or finance director, strong volunteer do is make follow-up calls. So if the candidate makes a call and someone pledges, I'm going to give you $100 on the first of the month, if it gets to be the third of the month and that donation hasn't come through, maybe the campaign manager can do that follow-up call. But generally speaking, there are only a few things that really only the candidate can do effectively, and I think soliciting these donations is one of those things. Best time of day for call time when you're available and when people answer the phone. Um, I'm going to share a tool here in a little bit where you can start tracking when your donations are coming in. So you might find for the people there's a certain time of day that works better, but I don't have a real rule of thumb for that. Thanking donors at another time. So maybe I would text somebody and say thank you, or make sure if I see them at an event, I have a conversation with them. Okay, call time tracker. I think Chris dropped this in the link. This is another resource from Arena. When you have your plan that says, I need to raise $10,000 for this election. I know Christy said I should try to front load it. That's really hard, but here's how, tactic by tactic, month by month, this is where I think the money's going to come from, knowing that maybe 50% of it's coming from call time. So you can use this tool to say, I'm going to schedule on my calendar 2 hour blocks, Tuesday through Sunday for call time. And I expect to raise X number of dollars each time I do call time. Using this tracker, you can see how are you trending? Are you on track to meet your goals? Are you running behind? In which case you might need to make some adjustments. Are you running ahead of schedule on your fundraising goals? Awesome. What does that mean for your planning purposes? So, the call time tracker, if you're raising any significant amount of money, I really recommend using this tool. This is a good slide to perhaps take a screenshot or something and have it in front of you during call time. These are some tips for making your ask, asking people for money. I think this might have come from the National Democratic Training Committee, but really it's about finding a point of connection between you and the donor, explain the context of why you need the donation, why now, how you're going to use the funds. Make your ask very specific. Can I count on you for a donation of X dollar amount today? One rule of thumb I've heard is think about how much money someone would spend for you on your birthday. So it's my birthday, and I know Chris Dearman is going to take me to dinner, and she's probably going to spend about 50 bucks on that dinner for me. I'm going to ask Chris to donate $50 to my campaign. Maybe I've got a rich aunt and she likes to live large and she's going to take me to dinner and she's going to spend 200 bucks. I'm going to ask her to donate $200 to my campaign. Just a little bit of a rule of thumb. Maybe, maybe I'm broke. So when Chris runs for office or when Chris's birthday comes around, I'm just going to buy her a beer. So she's going to ask me for 10 bucks. Okay. We talked about events. What I want to say here is if you are having an event and there's not a dollar amount on the invitation for tickets, it's not a fundraiser, it's a party, and that's different. So if it's a fundraising event, there's going to be a dollar amount for tickets. Um, Ask whoever is hosting your fundraising event to do the recruiting, to do call time, to ask their friends to buy a ticket to come to the event. Try not to spend too awful much money on the event. If someone's hosting for you, hopefully they are providing refreshments, things like that. Ideally, what you would do at the event is collect the checks that people have already promised you. That would be ideal. A little bit about PACs and endorsements. We talked about this a bit. If you have a large size race, state assembly, large county commissioner race, things like that, judicial races, um, you might have a lot of endorsement opportunities. Usually, each organization is going to ask you to fill out a survey talking about your race, your candidacy, and why they should support you. These surveys can take up a lot of time. It is a good activity for your campaign manager or a volunteer to help compile the responses to these endorsement surveys. Of course, the candidate should put eyes on it before it goes out the door. This is one of the activities that is a good thing for a committed volunteer to help you with. And Chris is going to share this link. This organization is the Democratic Municipal Official Organization. They have this list of potential organizations that do endorsements, not just for municipal races, not just for mayor, town council, but this is a good starting point. And as you submit questionnaires for endorsements, what I recommend is you I would start one Google document with the answers from all of the endorsement questionnaires because those questionnaires can be pretty repetitive and you don't want to recreate the wheel. So I'm going to look, how did I answer this similar question to some other organization? Let me use that as the starting point for the next one. Finance plan tracker, another template to help you track the money that's coming in, track plan versus actual. Your fundraising team, this is going to be the candidate, the campaign manager, your treasurer, or you might have a compliance consultant. Maybe you have a call time manager, might be a volunteer or a paid role if you have a large race. Treasurers need to officially tell the State Board of Elections that they are your treasurer. They do have to complete that mandatory training. Of course, you need to keep your campaign funds in a bank, not intermingled with your personal funds. And the treasurer also will help file those reports. Um, we have from the state party, we have a supplemental resource for treasurers that we're sharing here. This is in addition to the State Board of Elections. So this can be helpful if you have a treasurer, pass this along to them. We talked about planning around key dates, so important deadlines for fundraising periods, for filing deadlines. And you can use that. You've probably seen this before where you get, I don't know, here's a text message from Nancy Pelosi that says, at midnight tonight, the fundraising period ends and we want to show how strong we are. That's an example of building urgency around a fundraising period and deadline. I do recommend ActBlue as a fundraising tool. I used it for my own campaign when I worked for Run for Something, considering if candidates should be endorsed or not. One thing I looked at is how they were raising money. And if I saw somebody was collecting funds for their campaign and it said like Venmo me, that was a red flag that they might be a little bit in over their head. To ActBlue, there are some other tools that are similar, but the state party has a lot of experience with ActBlue, and they will do some trainings in the spring for candidates as well. Okay, let me keep going because I'm almost to the end, and I'm almost at 7 o'clock. Uh, okay, we here we go. I'm out of order. So, next week is field organizing training. If you can't make it, it will be posted on the YouTube channel afterwards, or you can email and I'll share it with you. If you haven't yet requested your vote builder, I definitely encourage you to do that. I shared the campaign plan template last week. There is a budgeting and fundraising section within that template. And that might be an old link. I'm sorry, Chris. Don't drop that Discord link if you haven't yet. I will include this in the email tomorrow if you want to join our candidate Discord group. This is a active link. Candidate office hours are Tuesday at noon, and many of our staff members are there to help answer questions. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording